there's multiple organizations out there that come up with estimates about how many people are being trafficked, right? So you got to remember, it's very difficult, especially given the lack of data and then the ability to collect data, accurate data on this, to have an exact number. But it's estimated somewhere between 20 to upwards of 40 million people are being human trafficked globally right now, and I think it's a lot higher than that because you have indentured servitude, you have labor trafficking, which is the biggest one, you have sex trafficking, which is, I don't want to say popular, probably the most infamous one, right now, because that's what most people talk about. Had the Sound of Freedom movie that kind of put the highlight on that and woke people up. And then, you have all kinds of different types of trafficking that have spun up just given the way the world is. And I guess the biggest one we're seeing right now is organ trafficking, where they're taking children and adults from very poor countries, war-torn areas, and they just disappear. They take their organs and they get shipped off to China and unfortunately even the U.S. To be put in somebody that needs it.
What exactly is the proper definition of human trafficking? Because I think when people hear the term, there's a place your brain goes to, and sure, that exists, but my understanding is that the scope is wider than what most people imagine. You've touched on a few different types, but how exactly is it defined?
Well, I'd say, you can look at it just as slavery. People being forced, taken from their home, taken from their family, taken from their environment, and being forced to do something they don't want to do, whether that be labor, sexual servitude, and then it can be even just be, again, like, being butchered for your organs, and in that way. So trafficking is a very, it's been used very broadly here in the U.S. One of the things I hate, man, and if you can't tell the truth and get people mad at you, then nothing ever changes. So I'm very disgruntled with how law enforcement fights human trafficking. Here in the U.S., where it's not a victim-centric approach. People aren't out there trying to rescue the kids; they're out there trying to arrest the Johns. And there's a lot of reasons for that: red tape, bureaucracy. The criminals have more rights than the victims these days, but. When you see these big ads that pop up, on Instagram, or social media, and it's like, 50 guys arrested in a human trafficking sting. People don't really think past like the reality of what that means. What they did is they got somebody to pretend to be a 12-year-old girl, right? And they'll get in a conversation with some guy, and he'll show up to have sex with her, and then they arrest him. Now, human trafficking arrest, that's what they call it. That's not trafficking anybody. Now, he's perpetuating a problem maybe by using human trafficking, but what happens, the other 6 nights of the week when he shows up and there is a 12-year-old girl there? You know what I mean? Who's out there rescuing them? Where are the targeted operations trying to get the children out of these organized crime rings and out of hell, essentially? Where's that going on? And so that's just been a biggest point of my frustration here with how we fight human trafficking in the U.S. We go after the end user. We don't go try to rescue the victim. Right. So everybody celebrates and shares these articles, and I'm not saying that that's bad or that's wrong, but it's not the solution to the problem. It's putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging wound. Right. So it's like trying to figure out how we can start to unravel these networks that are trafficking children and adults, throughout the U.S. And getting rid of Johns is part of the problem, but I'm more worried about saving the victim, pulling them out of hell. And then you get into a whole nother problem with this, man, is the reality is we just don't have the infrastructure to help these people, right? So you rescue them, and then what?
What do you mean by you don't have the infrastructure?
Well, so the foster care system's broken. Over 70% of children, think 68, 72%, it changes, of children in the foster care system will be sexually abused or trafficked before they get out of it.
What was that percentage you said?
68 to 72%. It changes on what data
in the
you
U.S.
look at. In the U.S., in the foster care system, will be sexually abused or trafficked in the foster care system before the age of 18. Child Protective Services is broken, hemorrhaging at the seams. People don't want to be social workers anymore. They don't want to deal with this massive inundation of issues. Because look at our society right now. When families are fracturing, when homes are falling apart, when inflation hits, when all of these economic factors hit, the people that are affected and the most helpless usually are the children. Right? So the systems are just broken right now. You've got kids sleeping on couches, even here in Nashville, Tennessee, inside of the buildings because they have nowhere to go. In Child Protective Services. And then there's little oversight and regulation on it. But then to pour gas on the fire, so to speak. I mean, how many illegal immigrants have come across the border in the past 4 years, and how many kids have? Where are those kids going? What's happening to them? No one's asking these questions, and it's almost like no one cares. It just kind of it's mind blowing, right?
I think it's one of those issues that people are vaguely aware of, but for many different reasons, it's rarely top of mind. And I think part of this, just from a human psychology part, I think maybe there's 2 or 3 big parts to it. I think number one is the sort of out of sight, out of mind. So even though in theory people know that this is something that happens, and I would imagine that if you live in a big city, you've probably just statistically walked past somebody who's involved in this, but it's like you don't even know. It's not visible. It's very underworld unless you're going out and looking for it. It's not like something, you can see the drug addiction issue. If you walk around a big city, you can see homelessness. You can see poverty. You can see violence. You can see theft. You can see war. These are things that you can see. Whereas this one, if you just live in whatever city, it could be Nashville, it could be New York, it could be LA, it could be Miami, it could be any small rural part of America. It's not like you're walking past and you're seeing, oh, look at that modern day slavery going 100%. On there. Oh, look at this trafficking. So I think that's a part of it. And then maybe what's connected to that is I don't think most people know the scale of the issue. So when you're even giving me certain numbers and estimates, I'm more aware of this than the average person,
right? Because
I run a podcast and I talk to lots of different people, and I know people who are involved in this in terms of fighting against it. And so, I'm aware of that, but I'm aware most people just aren't. So, and then I think the final part is perhaps that it's such a dark topic.
100%.
That as you're telling me things, like even me sitting here as an interviewer, I'm feeling like a discomfort of there's that thing of like, why don't we talk about something nicer? You see what I mean? So people don't really want to confront the issue because it's so dark and ugly, and particularly if you're talking about children being involved, people are just like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's not dinner time conversation.
It's not. And I talk about those points a lot when I try to get people to realize that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not true, or just because it's not in your reality. And, trafficking is getting out of control, but child exploitation is arguably 100 times worse right now
compared
to trafficking. It's probably, in my opinion, based on the data we're seeing, it's the fastest growing and largest crime in the U.S. right now.